where I serviced was a rural area, so I had a lot of leverage with negotiating because there wasn't a lot of options in my area. So that's something I don't want new people to come on thinking I have to accept the broker rate and then model their whole business after that, because it's a disservice.
All right. Hello, Rachel. Hello, Jing. Thanks for joining us today. So we're here to talk about pricing in NEMT. And I've got some great questions. This is a topic that often comes up. Wonder if you guys could both give me just a quick 30-second introduction on yourself and what you do, and how you've learned about NEMT pricing.
So I'm Rachel Scholler, and I owned and operated an NEMT for 17 years in Wisconsin. I sold my company in March of last year, 2025, and am doing consulting now for startups and existing companies looking to scale or optimize their operations. So I have a lot of hands-on experience and a love of this industry. So I've just transitioned now into the consulting side to help providers build up their businesses and make a good living doing it.
Great.
Okay, so my name is Jing Zhu. So I'm one of the co-founders of Duet. So I work for the company Duet. I mainly support providers, our providers in different states. Right now we have providers in almost 20 states. I work very closely with them. I have seen new providers really struggling, trying to understand how they can price their services. And then even the providers who have been running for say 10, 20 years, they also have some pricing questions. Their old pricing sheets are really dated. So we will talk about that. So I think this is a great topic. I love to discuss with Rachel and James with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so excited to get into it. Obviously, I know Jing very, very well as my co-founder, and we've done webinars together before, Rachel, and had that panel at NEMT. So awesome to hear your perspective again here. So first question, as a new provider, how should you structure your pricing?
So I can kickstart. So we mostly I think it's not your pricing, it's the market's pricing. A lot of times what we have seen, even for the same trips, wheelchair trips, depending which state, even the local market you are, the price can be drastically different, especially in California. And so as a new provider, we always recommend them to do market research. We call it a secret shopper experiment. So basically, you just call a bunch of providers in your market and pretending you have a trip, and then gather all the information, and then you can price your own. So that's what we recommend. So Rachel, what's your recommendation?
Mine is the same, doing market research, calling, and a lot of people need to be mindful, the broker rates are dictated to you in most instances, but your private pay can be a little bit higher. Where I serviced was a rural area, so I had a lot of leverage with negotiating because there wasn't a lot of options in my area. So that's something I don't want new people to come on thinking I have to accept the broker rate and then model their whole business after that, because it's a disservice. So market research is very important, but also just knowing your demographic and your service area, your competition, things like that to get the data you need to make an informed decision.
That makes sense. And do you recommend metered pricing, tiered pricing, something different?
For me, we did metered, and again, because it's rural, we were traveling. It was not unusual to go 10, 15, 20, even 30 miles unloaded to get to the client. So we always did the base rate plus mileage and deadhead if it applies, but in a more populated area, it could make a lot of sense to go with the flat rate pricing, and it simplifies billing and your entry and things like that. But there is the potential to lose money doing that as well, especially in a rural area like I was.
Mm-hmm. Jing, is there any time you'd specifically recommend tiered pricing?
I personally feel they're very similar. If we're talking about the same market, same geography. So I would use it as a competitive strategy. If I'm competing with folks who are doing metered pricing, I will use tiered pricing. So make it as simple for the facilities or the private pay folks to understand. But I agree with Rachel. Tiered pricing can be a little tricky if somebody is outside your area. So you have to be very careful. You have to really geofence or define your service market very carefully, and then also communicate with whoever help you with the cost, and so that you don't you don't give a number which later on you figure out is not the correct number.
So I realize the actual price is going to vary dramatically, across the nation, based on local conditions and everything. But what are some reasonable, say, base rates plus mileage rates? Or like maybe a range of what you've seen as plausible.
It
Wow.
runs the gamut. I mean, where I am rural, it's less than you're going to have in California or Florida or. So it's between $25 and $30 for wheelchair. We don't distinguish ambulatory, so we're getting the same rate whether it's ambulatory or wheelchair, which, is good and bad. Our service is was ambulatory, and then it was probably like 70% ambulatory to the wheelchair. So for us, it was a huge advantage having the pricing that way. Some people in certain contracts do pay extra for wheelchair or stretcher, as they should. So that was just sort of in the mileage. It's between 240 and 350, depending on what contract you're working with. Jing probably has a lot more experience with a lot of different states and markets. I've worked primarily with the rural areas, so but Jing, I'd be interested to hear.
Yeah, well, it is absolutely different from different markets. I have seen wheelchairs. Let's just use, say, like 4 miles, 5 miles, very short trips. I've seen the price ranging from $35 to $75 or $90, depending which state, which market. I mean, it really puzzles me a lot. I think actually as a business owner, it's you charge whatever you can charge, right? So like 35, I've seen it's more mostly because of the old contract, right? They're stuck with a like 10, 15-year-old contract, which the price was like 10, 15-year-old. That time it looks reasonable, but now because the contract, if the other party doesn't want to negotiate, then you're stuck with it. So, I mean, like if you're stuck with this old contract with very lower pricing, I think most people just reduce the volume. So trying to cut the loss. So the loss. But in any case, yeah, I think actually it's and then in terms of a meter, I've seen like a care car, now it's being acquired by another company. Like there's some brokers paying $1 a mile for ambulatory. I know it's like I can't believe people just go for it. Or I have seen people charge $5 per mile if it's gurney trips or even higher, because I mean sometimes if for stretcher trips or gurney trips you have two drivers, right? Two like person to provide the service. Obviously you have to bake that cost into the meter cost. So it varies. Like regular ambulatory and door-to-door service, typically it's I would say most commonly somewhere between $2, $3, $3.50 per mile. And also remember the gas cost is very different, right? So if you're in Texas, well, you're lucky you can have like a $2 per gallon. You're in California, we're almost $5 per gallon, so that counts a lot.
How do you, like as a new provider, how would you weight sort of the upfront cost versus the mileage cost?
Rachel, I'll refer this one to you.
As far as like just paying your overhead, you're saying, and making sure you're going to make enough, or
Well,
what?
the question would be like, as a new provider, how do you decide whether to charge, $30 up front and $3 per mile, or like $50 up front and $2 per mile?
It's kind of a tough question, and I think you have to gauge what's in the market too. You don't want to price yourself clients. If somebody's $50 and charging for their trip fee and $1 a mile, and then the next guy is $35 but charging $3 a mile, people just look at the $1 like, oh, this has to be cheaper because I'm paying $1. But when you start going, multiple miles, that gets lopsided really quickly. And a lot of people, unfortunately, just don't take the time to even understand. So they see a lower dollar amount and automatically the client thinks, oh, this is the one I should go to. So you don't want to make your contract stand out so much that it's like they're not even in the same ballpark as the other guys, even though in reality you may be a little bit cheaper than them, but you're not presenting it that way. So I would say you really kind of want to be somewhere in the vicinity of what your competitors are, so you don't, I'm not a fan of undercutting and being the lowest, because it's really hard to raise those rates when you start your contracts too low. So, and you also, as a new provider, I don't feel like you should be charging the premium because you don't have the history and experience yet to back that up either. So I guess it's really, what's in your region and what your competitors are, and kind of go right in the middle is my best answer for that until you get some trips under your belt and start to see what your true costs are.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
That makes sense. So, all right, let's talk about like additional fees. So, I've seen providers charge for things like, wait time, obviously, having an escort, having an out-of-town trip, like bariatric, you should definitely charge more for. Specialty wheelchairs, like curb to curb versus door to door, nights and weekends, service animal, like taking extra passengers. How do you sort of manage the cost and think about how to price for those, or which ones do you think it's worth pricing for?
I think all of them, to be honest, because you want to charge where you can, because there's so many things that pop up and erode your profit over time. So if you need a second attendant, if you're going longer distance and you're going to wait 3 or 4 hours, somebody's having a procedure, you absolutely should be compensated for that. I think it's ridiculous for any broker or somebody to think we shouldn't pay for your time. It's almost insulting, but providers don't know that. So they think, oh, well, they want me to include the waiting time, and then you're losing money. So when we did trips locally, waiting time didn't always apply. We had enough vehicles that the driver doing the A leg didn't do the B leg, so we drop them there onto the next person, and that eliminates the waiting time locally, which, is a benefit to the broker too, because they feel like they're not having to absorb more costs. But if we're traveling, for us, it was about 20 miles. If we're going more than 20 miles and we're going to wait, we need to bill for that. Same thing, nights and weekends. We charged about 25 to 30% higher for those rates. And mainly because we're getting into overtime, I'm having to be on call, or my manager, somebody has to be on call if a van breaks down or something happens. So doing the trips on the weekend are great. You're making more money, but there are more costs involved to do that. And towards the end of my business, burnout was a real thing. So I didn't want my drivers then to think they have to work all weekend and you have 1 or 2 trips and you're paid a premium for it, but it's not enough to justify the time that you're giving up. So that's kind of that. The service animal you cannot charge for legally. So that is something, and I had an interesting early in my business, probably 15 years ago. We had a woman we took regularly, and she had a Great Dane service dog, so that's fine. And when they arranged the ride, the social worker had said, she's going to have a caregiver with her. So it's like, okay, no big deal. We had a minivan with a side ramp, and we pull up. The caregiver is also in a wheelchair and has a German Shepherd service dog. And I didn't know at that point what the law was. The social worker couldn't help me. And it's like, do I need to take 2 wheelchairs? So the caregiver is not able to push the client. So we're not getting compensated for that. And now you've got this other giant dog. And they were also training a 3rd dog to be a service dog. So it's 3 dogs and 2 wheelchairs, and we're getting paid for 1 trip. But I was really caught off guard with that. it was a routine client, so I didn't want to offend her either. We ended up just sending a larger vehicle and transporting them all, but then I got really clear on the legality of it. You can't even really ask to verify it's a service animal. I mean, you can ask, but you can't ask for documentation to be provided to you. It is against the ADA, guidelines. So it's a really great area in NEMT, and I haven't seen where it's really addressed and clear for us, because you never want to violate somebody's rights, but at the same hand, you need to make sure you can even safely transport 2 dogs and 2 chairs. And so you can't charge for that. I sort of wish you could, because it is a lot more work, but that's discrimination. So that's just something people should be mindful of, because not everybody discloses that. What if the driver is allergic to dogs and you don't know until you get there? And now it's a really awkward position to be in if you're not prepared for it, honestly.
Yeah, this is an amazing story. I think medical transport, there are a lot of such stories. I've seen so a couple years ago, one of our client had a hospital discharge as a bariatric patient, weighs about almost 500 pounds, and needs to be transported on gurney. And then I think she also has a powered wheelchair, needs to go together. And then it's a 2-hour trip, right, from where they are 2 hours away. So the provider coded $2,000. I mean, based on their price and everything. The hospital was like shocked, said, it's 2 hours, I know, but why is so expensive? Well, the provider said, yeah, well, basically bariatric, I need to send 3 drivers minimum, or even 4, right? So my gurney vans, can only take one additional driver, I think. So basically, my actual driver, the additional driver, needs to have a separate vehicle. So basically, I'm sending 2 vehicles, one for the patient, one for the additional drivers, 2 hours to drop the patient, and then 2 hours coming back. So I have all those costs, right? So it's on a Sunday as well. So all the costs add together. So I have to charge you that price. Otherwise, I mean, I'm losing money. So I think for the amazing thing about medical transport is, just like Rachel mentioned, there are so many conditions, situations. Sometimes you are not even aware, right? The dog situation, sometimes they say, oh, I have a service dog, and then you show up, there's this gigantic dog, and then you have a little sedan. So so that's why when taking the bookings, book the trips, you have to be very careful. You have to clarify the situation. But as soon as you hear apartment numbers, immediately you have to ask, are there any staircases, ramps, or elevators? So if you showed up with 15 steps to the second floor, then you have to rescue the whole trip. So I think actually the additional fees. Yeah, there are just all those conditions, right? I mean, you cannot provide a very long list of the fees to in your contract. So you just have to leave your room have a condition, have a term saying, okay, any special conditions, or we might charge a special rate, so to cover yourself later on if you do run into this situation, 3 dogs and 2 wheelchairs just for one trip. So.
And we've thought about that a lot at Duet, Jing, right? We have the different colored tags for staircase or bariatric or stuff that go on the trips. We have sort of the level of mobility sort of as an icon next to the trip, whether it's a wheelchair, stretcher. We have if you fill out a rate sheet, you can enter in oh, I'm going to charge an extra $20 if it's nights and weekend, or an extra 10% if it's bariatric, or something like that. So I know you've thought about that a lot, Jing.
Yeah, it's all the experience, right? I mean, everybody has that situation. You lose money off this. Yeah. The first time you run into this situation, you will lose money, but then immediately you will have one additional fee to cover it. So.
Yeah. So Rachel, you talked about having the standing trip customers you want to keep happy. Do you ever give a discount for a recurring dialysis rider, or do they sort of pay the same rates as everyone?
So most of the time they paid the same rates. Early in my career, I did offer like, I mean, this is dating myself, but like a punch card. So every like 10, I think it was every 10 trips, they'd get 50% off if it was private pay. And, it was great. I felt like I wanted to give back and, I'm trying to build goodwill, but the customers didn't really care, honestly. So they're more interested in consistency and us showing up. So, I did that for a year and a half, and then I realized this is a lot of extra time and effort. And I think they really just appreciate showing up on time every time and getting to their appointments. So, I was at a point where our service, I knew it was good and I wasn't going to discount that. Once you lower the rates, it's really hard to get it back up, even though you think you're doing a good thing and being helpful. But now if that person talks to their neighbor who's a new client for you and goes once a month, it might be like, well, why aren't you giving me the price Joe had? Because, we're right next door. And then you just get into a weird, where people might judge you or think you're not being honest and you're charging different rates for different people. And it's just to simplify it, we chose to just stand behind our quality and charge what we felt was fair. But the only, I guess, caveat to that would be nursing homes and outings. I did do a lot of discounted rates for that, where you're picking up 8 or 10 people and taking them into an outing because they probably can't afford it or have the budget at the facilities for the outings like they used to. The budgets have been shrinking year after year, and there's so many things like taking in my area for the Christmas lights. They want to go tour that at Christmas time, or people going to lunch. So it's sort of my way of giving back is having a little bit of a discounted rate for that, probably only charging 25 or 30% per person. So overall, I'm making more than if I did one transport, but really, it's more about serving the community and more people. And that was sort of one way to give back while still covering our costs and, just feel good about what we're doing. And so many people have a great outing.
Multi-load is like always awesome if you can set it up. That's something else Jing built into Duet. It was like the ability to make it easy to pick up. Okay, we're gonna pick up person A, then pick up person B at the next location, then drop them both off at C, or even drop them off at like another location D. Because I think like obviously you want to be respectful of the rider's time and deliver them a good experience, but if they're okay with it, I think that's an awesome way to sort of be more efficient with your routing. Save gas, save emissions. If you have a good driver and good passengers who don't mind talking to each other, like that's even better.
Sometimes it's even better because the passengers don't get to see a lot of people. So sometimes the conversations are so organic and fun because they weren't expecting to see another person. So there is like you said, you have to make sure the clients are okay with that. But usually in my experience, they have been. And as a provider, it's such a great way to make a little bit more profit on the trips.
Yeah, like we have providers who have a PACE program contract. So PACE is taking folks from their residence to their senior centers for various activities, which is actually a pretty good multi-load opportunities. And back to recurring trips, whether the pricing, what I've seen is a lot of folks do give a discount, various like 5%, 10%, depending on the providers for dialysis trip longer than like a couple months. So I think because we have a provider always tell me, oh yeah, my dialysis patient is my VIPs. So if I lose one, it's now $50 or $100 a day. It's like several $1,000s a month. So like, I mean, people understand that dialysis is the main like bread and butter for a lot of providers for their trips. So they want to give a little bit more sweetener to keep the patients.
I do remember hearing providers say like literally I will leave someone else waiting in order to rush over and get my dialysis patient, and so they don't have to wait because like as you said, they're so important.
So one thing actually I do talking about, I'm not sure James, you're gonna ask, I do puzzle about I've seen the pricing is some people like a round trip, right? Some people charge the A leg higher, much higher than B leg. So for instance, like the round trip is $100 for a wheelchair. A leg is most people charge $50 per leg, right? But I've seen some people charge A leg, say $60 and B leg $40. That always puzzle me because I feel like the cost is the same, right? So what's the difference? And like, so Rachel, have you heard about this? And what's your view?
The only time I've heard this was from Paul from Gentle Turns does this with some of his. We were talking about this like a week ago, actually. And I find it puzzling as well because we would charge deadhead or if it was private pay, we charge the full mileage. So I might not charge the trip fee back, but I am billing the mileage at the full amount. And if it's a regular, really good client, I may discount it a little bit just for goodwill. But sorry, the sun is in my face just a little. So, I may discount it a little bit, but I find it odd as well because your costs are what your costs are. And, we want to be compensated or paid for that. So, and I think it gets more complicated. I don't, depending who does their billing then, are they going to remember this A leg is supposed to be higher than the round trip leg? Are they billing still an A and B for a round trip? Or, I guess I'd be interested on how they do that. I guess I can see some of the value in it, but it's not something that we did, no.
Yeah, because I feel like if most people, if they take your service for A leg, it's unlikely they're going to use somebody else for B leg, right?
Why
so
would
it doesn't
they?
make any sense. Yeah, I know. So that's why, I've seen people are using this. It creates a lot of hassles for us for the software part, right? To have to tell A leg and B leg, and then also, like you said, the billers have to figure out, which one is A leg, which one is B leg. And what if they cancel B leg? Are we going to charge A leg fully? I mean, there's just so many questions. I personally think charging each leg should be just its own own trip, right? Because for you as a provider, that's solid cost. It's a single trip cost. So in any case, I think that's an interesting phenomenon.
Yeah, weird. So next question from me. When does it make sense to charge deadhead miles? When can you get away with charging deadhead miles?
So for us, our rule of thumb was over 10 miles, pretty much. Certainly if you ever went out of the county, like where we were, we had 4 or 5 medical centers within like a 1.5 mile area. So everybody kind of was going to the same place anyways. So, and again, if it's an established client and we're dropping someone off, I may not charge if we're picking somebody else up in the same area. It really would depend on each trip, but I try to charge deadhead whenever you can because you truly are traveling. And my argument is a tow truck, a taxi cab, they're all billing from when they leave. Why should ours be any different? We're on the road, we're exposed to liability while we're on the road. So I just feel like we really should be compensated for that time and mileage and the wear and tear on our vehicles as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. So depending on the market, some providers, we have providers who covers 200 miles, like a huge market for them. It's not quite a deadhead miles, so they just have to strategically position their vehicles based on where the trips are. So depending on the market, so I do recommend to charge deadhead miles because it's a cost, right? So especially if you drop somebody 2 hours away, and then it literally take that driver's 2 hour back, you have to pay that driver. So it's a solid cost for you. So folks have to be very careful with that. And then for brokers, a lot of brokers don't pay deadhead miles, which is really bad. But that it is what it is. So but providers need to be very careful, figure out their own cost on the deadhead mile side.
I agree. And even, there's no shame in turning trips down. As a newer provider, that just seems so counterintuitive. But like you said, if you're going to do a trip and make $150 or $200 going however far away, and then you're coming back unloaded, that's almost 3/4 of your day for the one trip. And just doesn't make sense. And in my experience, and again, I was in a rural area, but brokers were open to negotiate. So if you turn the trip back and there's no other providers, they're kind of scrambling. And that's where it's like, well, I can do it for X amount. And a lot of times they would take that price and they just want it done. They know you're reliable and they don't have to worry about it. So I would encourage people to not be afraid of negotiating. It's a little harder when you're newer because you don't have the history behind you, but I you know, if you don't ask, you're never going to get it. So I would
Sure.
encourage people to definitely ask.
Yeah, and I think like accepting and declining trips can be done a little bit strategically. Like if you have a really good client, let's say like an ER discharge that gives you like really good trips and preferentially gives them to you, and then sometimes they give you like a really rough trip that you don't really want to take, you might take that and you know say, look, I would normally push back on this, but I'm gonna do it sort of because I like working with you. That's different than just taking these sort of like broker trips where you're gonna break even or you know lose money, as you're saying.
And a client you may never transport again as
Right,
well.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like it's very
Yeah,
different if
that's a
it's
good point.
relationship building or just some random broker trip. So another big question that I've heard come up a lot. Do you negotiate prices individually with different facility? I mean, it sounds like for private pay, it's all the same price. But do you negotiate prices individually with different like facilities and broker contracts, or do you have sort of a standard rate that you use?
So we have a standard rate, but it is different because every broker and contract, they want to get the lowest price they can. So it really does become a negotiation at that point and what you're willing, you know, to compromise and agree to. The goal is to always try to get your private pay rate for as many rides as you can, but it's not realistic. And you have to give a little as well. I don't want it to come across like we come in with all these demands because I'm the provider. Well, the brokers are going to laugh at you. So you really need to make sure you're bringing something to the table as well that, you know, gives them incentive to actually work with you and use your service.
Yeah, I think actually nowadays, like you negotiate what what you can negotiate for. So I feel like with technologies, it's now too difficult to track the trips. It's still, it's kind of messy in the end with all those additional fees. One thing, we had a experience with a new provider last year. He finally got a contract with a large facilities with multiple locations. So he wants to negotiate his rate. So I consult with him about strategies. So I actually think you can have your base rate, which you can have a set of rate for, say, facilities, a set of rate for hospitals. But when you negotiate with individual facility, depending how many trips they give to you, right? So if they say, oh yeah, I will use you just overflow, occasionally you'll get 1 or 2 trips. I don't think you should give up too much. It should be really built as a private pay. But if they say, oh yeah, you're going to be one of my main providers, then you can, if they can guarantee you a certain number of trips a week or a month, whatever, so you can actually give them a bulk discount or volume-based discount. So you can put together a different type of tiered pricing. If you give me 10 trips
Oh, I
a
like
week,
that. Yes, you could
yeah.
actually
Yeah, you can
put
lower
it right
a little
in there
bit.
and say, oh, I will charge you this rate, you know, whatever. But if you get above 100
Yeah.
trips this month, then I'll charge you that rate.
Yeah, so you can. Yeah, and pricing is really an art to a large extent than science. It's really depending on each situation. So yes, I would say if you definitely want to negotiate for individual accounts.
So we've talked a lot about discounting, and especially in this context of like strategically discounting for certain clients. Are there any other times when you would discount?
For me, it would really only be if we made a mistake or we were really late, or a lot of times I would offer a discount. Sometimes you're late, it's no big deal, but personally, I tried to keep my company at a 98% on time, and that we were within 3 to 5 minutes of that routine, like that was our standard. So I would recognize the error and reach out to the client before they had a chance to even complain to us and make it right. So that's not everybody does that or wants to do that, but for us, it was just really important that people knew I understood and recognized where the failure occurred, and we're trying to do something to fix that. So really, that was the only time, you know, we did some charity things like the Tim Tebow. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that event, the Night to Shine, where it's the prom for disabled people, and it's all over the country, but that's one of the things, you know, we did free rides for that to take the kings and queens to the event and the red carpet, and just different charities and things like that to give back as opposed to discounting. We just tried really hard not to do that, because once you do it too much, people start to expect it, or they want to know, well, you did it this time, why can't you do it that time? And that saying, no good deed goes unpunished. It's sort of like you try to do something nice and then it bites you. So we weren't in the habit of discounting, but that's not to say there's not a, value in doing that occasionally.
Yeah, well, situation based. I think new riders, like if they use you first, I feel some providers will give a little bit small discount. And then I've seen people saying if you pay cash, there will be the rate will be slightly lower, because you get you close the trip right away, the payment right away. And then like Rachel said, there are certain situations I've seen providers because the patient just really don't have that, like the budget for that trip, and then they really need that trip. So yeah, they will give like $10-20 discount depending on the situation and how busy they are. Yes.
So how about cancellations and no-shows? That's sort of a touchy topic. You don't want to offend your clients and whatnot, but how do you guys think about pricing cancellations and no-shows? What kind of fees do you charge?
So I was a stickler. The first couple years I didn't charge at all, and I would get frustrated and I'd be angry, and I got to a point of probably after 4 or 5 years, like, this is BS and I'm not doing it. And so we charge, if it's less than 2 hours, they're paying the whole amount. Brokers, don't want to pay most of my contracts. I would have either a $10 or a $15 no-show fee, which doesn't really compensate for what you're losing, but you're at least getting something. But that was like pulling teeth. And my argument is the same thing. I'm dispatching somebody and we're staffed. I can't, even 2 hours isn't really enough time. If you get 2 hour notice, like they say, I can't fill that ride that quickly. So after 3 times, if we pull up to the home and they just decide they're not going, I would refuse to transport, period. Unless they're hospitalized, there's a real, illness. There are things that happen, but you get to learn people habitually take advantage when they're not paying for the service. So I was pretty tough on the no-shows.
Yeah, no-show is really tough. I've seen like the no-show, I've seen providers have 6% or even like 7-8% no-show rate.
Wow.
And they don't get paid. Motive care is notoriously not paying no-show. So I think no-show is a solid cost. You have to negotiate really hard to get no-show fees. A dollar is a dollar, because your driver is literally there, and you might miss other trips as well. So definitely negotiate no-show rate, and also have a policy like what Rachel said. Define what is a no-show. Okay, you canceled on the spot. It's now it's not a cancellation. It's a no-show. So you canceled even on the same day. Most people say if you canceled within 24 hours or at least the same day, that's a no-show. That's like, I need to have like charge you at least 50% or sometimes 100% of the ALAG charge. So that's really important. And then for private pay, I've seen providers, like every time they take the trip, they have to read this sentence or like a paragraph to be very transparent about the no-show or cancellation fees, because a lot of times private pay is better because it's there out of their own pocket. It's really the brokers or Medicaid trips where patients don't really pay, take a free trip. So anything free they care not that much. So that's actually the time you have to really confirm and like do the confirmations the day before to make sure everybody is going. So yeah, no-show is really tough, and then it's strictly out of your own margin. So that's you want to minimize as much as possible.
Yeah.
We even started for private pay requiring prepayment with 24 hours before. So that way, if they weren't going to pay, it was a good indication they didn't plan on going. So a few people didn't like that, but honestly, if you're going to pay, what's the difference? It shouldn't be a big deal. And if a client keeps doing it, it's a lack of respect at that point. So I don't even want to work with people that can't have the basic respect of canceling a ride. It just comes down to, and I feel like I'm a little hard on people, but It's just, why do I want to spin my wheels with somebody that's, taking up time in my schedule, routinely doesn't go? It just gets to a point, it's not worth that money. I don't want it. There'll be a new client to fill that spot.
Rachel, would
Yeah.
you send out like texts or calls or something to try to reduce the no-shows?
Yeah, we would call the night before, but that doesn't matter. They'll tell you they're going and still no-show you in the morning. And so it got to the point where now I'm spending an hour the day before somebody in my office is, and it's not alleviating the problem, where the prepayment really, and even the brokers, if they're paying a no-show fee, they kind of re-educate the patient a little bit too, because they don't want to keep paying those fees either.
Yeah. I mean, I think Rachel mentioned something really important. You need to keep a tab on the patient's behavior, right? So if somebody constantly no-show, then definitely you want to reconsider whether you want to take that patient or not. So that's a no-show. Occasionally, I mean, there are patients, so occasionally no-show is fine because their situation, health conditions can change. That's totally fine. But if somebody like no-show last week 3 times, then like you probably want to delete the person.
Got it. All right, well, that's everything I wanted to cover. Any other general thoughts about pricing or advice you would give to NEMT providers thinking about how to price?
My biggest advice, I tell everybody, not to underprice yourself and know your worth. It feels a little awkward sometimes asking for these high rates, and newer people, sometimes the rates can cause sticker shock, but you really need to understand the quality service and what you're bringing to the table, and don't discount that, which it's really easy for new providers to discount what they're doing just to get the work, but that's counterproductive in the long run.
Yeah. So I think, there's one situation because I've seen providers provide trips city to city. They have this rate sheet, and it doesn't make any sense to me because I feel like that was really before the Google Map becomes popular. So and then I realized the reason they use that is because they have contracts with using the same rate has been like going on for 10 years, right? So they don't want to touch that contract because once you open the can of worm, you may not get the rate you like. If they don't complain, just use it. So I mean, I think pricing is such a art. Then it's really an art than science. So you have to be mindful and when you adjust it or new pricing, you just be really based on the situations. Be open-minded and then have certain flexibilities, but also need to have your bottom line, your principles ready.
All right, well, thanks so much, both of you. Really
Thank
appreciate
you
it.
for having me.
Okay, thanks. Okay, this is fun. Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you. Have a good day, and I hope you guys have a
Okay.
good trip.